In the realm of contact sports, boxing has experienced countless tragic evenings that prompt speculation about its essence as a sport or a savage display. Boxing is governed by regulations that, if observed correctly, strive to level the playing field during matches. Break time 0 fights. However, there have been numerous instances where certain individuals deliberately disregard these regulations. This is the account of how an unjust deed culminated in one of the most profound tragedies in the history of boxing. On the night of June 16, 1983, Billy Ray Collins and Luis Resto faced off in the ring at Madison Square Garden as the co-main event of the evening, featuring Roberto Durán against Davey Moore. Collins was a young 21-year-old from Tennessee with a record of 14 wins and 7 losses. Collins was trained by his father, also named Billy, and this would be his first fight on the big stage. On the other hand, Luis Resto had a record of 20 wins, 8 losses and 2 draws. Clearly, Resto was not the favorite, yet he wasn't going to be an easy opponent to defeat either. In Resto's corner was Panama Lewis, one of the most well-known trainers of the time. Collins was anticipated to emerge victorious in the match, yet some boxing experts believed Resto could cause an upset. What none of the experts and fans were aware of was that Luis Resto had stepped into the ring with approximately an ounce of padding taken out from each of his gloves, in addition to having plaster in his wraps. Essentially, Luis Resto climbed into the ring with lethal weapons instead of boxing gloves. And what under normal circumstances would have been a top-billed fight turned into a spectacle of brutality when viewed with the knowledge of what was really happening. For 10 rounds, the boxers exchanged blows. Collins' eyes began to swell slowly, and it wasn't normal swelling. In the final rounds, it wasn't just the eyes that were swollen and closing, but the entire area around the eyes, the cheekbones, and the forehead was extremely swollen. Despite it all, Collins kept throwing left hooks until the final bell. There was no sign of mercy from Resto, no respite. With the altered gloves, he stayed as close to Collins as possible, round after round, and tried to hit him as hard and as often as he could. Collins stepped back into the ring to fight the 10th and final round. His face had transformed into a misshapen mass from all the blows by the Puerto Rican. Nonetheless, he managed to hold on until the end. The fight was decided on points, and Luis Resto, by unanimous decision, was the winner. As no one knew the secret of Luis Resto and his trainer, everything seemed normal. It had been an unexpected and surprising victory, but nothing out of the ordinary. There was no reason to suspect any injustice had occurred. Once the bout was over, Resto approached Collins to congratulate him on a great fight. He hugged him, kissed him, and consoled him with a strange intensity. Afterward, he greeted the coach, his father, and that's when everything changed. When Resto went over to Collins' corner to offer his congratulations, he shook hands with his father and coach, Billy Collins Sr., who immediately noticed that padding was missing from the Puerto Rican's glove. And without a second thought, he called over the commissioner to check out what was going on. 450 punches had landed on the disfigured face of young Collins Jr. At the hospital, a right eye retina injury was detected, and severe damage to the left. Miraculously, he didn't lose his sight completely, but the aftermath prevented him from ever returning to the ring. Meanwhile, the Boxing Federation announced that Luis Resto was banned from boxing for life. Nevertheless, the family and the victim decided to take the case to court, where he was sentenced to 3 years in prison, along with his trainer, for assault, conspiracy, and possession of a deadly weapon: his fists. But despite being proven to have been unfairly defeated, Billy Collins was never the same after that night on June 16th, 1983. The fact that his boxing dreams ended at 21, when he was one of the brightest young prospects in his country, completely devastated him. It was a terrifying 9 months. He struggled with depression, alcoholism, and drug addiction, until finally on March 6, 1984, he died when he crashed his car into a ravine. Some even go so far as to say that Luis Resto and Panama Lewis killed Billy Collins. Their actions set off the chain of events that led to his death. Others believe such a claim is too biased, that Resto and Lewis didn't make Collins drink. They didn't drive him to his end. In any case, Collins' life changed that night at Madison Square Garden because of Resto and Lewis, and certainly the change wasn't for the better. The worst part is that for years, 25 years to be exact, Resto denied committing any crime. He claimed ignorance, said he knew nothing about the gloves, said it must have been Panama Lewis, his trainer, who did everything. Then, in 2009, a documentary about the fight was made. In the documentary, Resto finally admitted he knew about the tampered gloves and claimed that, in addition to removing the padding from the gloves, Lewis had applied plaster to his wraps to harden them and gave him a drink during the fight, which they called Magic Potion. The drink was water mixed with crushed asthma pills to open up the lungs and give Resto a second wind. In the documentary, Luis Resto met with Collins' widow to apologize and admitted that he had indeed cheated. Resto showed signs of accepting the blame for his actions. Yet occasionally Resto felt the need to make it clear that he was a top-level fighter who didn't need to cheat to win. For instance, in the documentary, Resto claimed he was better than Collins and that he would have beaten him in a rematch anywhere, anytime. He said verbatim, "I could beat him with big gloves, small gloves, anything. I knew too much about him. He lost in New York, he would have lost in Tennessee too. I was going to beat him there too." After losing his career as a professional boxer, Luis Resto began training kids in a gym where he also lived. And then, in 2011, Resto applied for a license to become a cornerman, which would allow him to enter the fight arena, the fighters' locker rooms, and be in the corner as the fighter's second. It also meant that he would be entitled to a share of the fighter's earnings as a coach. For those who don't know, a cornerman is an assistant who is in the fighter's corner. They can help with cuts, give the fighter water, apply Vaseline to their face, and so on. However, his application was immediately denied with the following note: "A licensed boxing second is expected to assist in a boxer's corner. They may be asked to help with the gloves and wraps of a boxer. If these tasks are not performed correctly, an opponent can be harmed. Due to the direct relationship between your previous illegal actions that also violated the Commission's rule and the duties of a licensed boxing second, the Commission determines that you lack the overall fitness and the character required to obtain the license, and granting your application would not be in the best interest of the sport of boxing." This tragedy left us with a Billy Collins who is no longer with us, a Panama Lewis who is still in Miami, still training high-profile boxers. He'll never be able to step into the ring with them again, but he makes do with what he's paid for his work at the gym. And Luis Resto, who is now 67 years old and remains in the same situation, training young boxers in the Bronx, doing a lot of road work and living as a guest on someone else's property. It's unclear whether Resto will ever get a license in the future. What we do know is that even if he is forgiven at some point, the boxing world will never forget the terrible act he committed in 1983. 183.